Hey, how's it going, everybody? Today, I want to talk about just general kind of the lack of knowledge of the young people in society today, specifically on how the government works and how things are run and actually what kind of country we are. I hear a lot of people talking about how certain people are destroying democracy this, democracy that. Will of the people, which is true in a certain sense, but our founding fathers created this country in a very specific way to not allow the majority to oppress the minority. So they created a system that allowed people to it was set up in a way that gave voices to places where there are less people and made sure that everybody had representation. And it's not a democracy; it's a republic, and that's just one of the many things that I've heard and seen a lot growing up that people just don't seem to understand. They always complain about the popular vote and this and that, and this person won the popular vote, this person won the popular vote. But at the end of the day, if you had just complete mob rule, a lot of bad things would have been either implemented or would have been kept in place. Certain things at different points in time, such as the right for women to vote. I mean, at the time in the 1900s, during the suffrage movement, most women did not want the right to vote. And if it was a complete democracy where everybody got, a single vote and nobody could do the right thing, they probably would have never gotten the right, or they would not have gotten the responsibilities taken out, specifically bucket duty and the draft. Before then, if you voted, you had to be a firefighter for a certain amount of time, and you had to be registered for the draft for war. And that was the main reason that a lot of women did not want the right to vote, because they didn't want to have those responsibilities. So the people in power, mostly men at the time, agreed that they should have the right to vote, which is true, which is correct. And they said that they removed those requirements from the right to vote. And if that wasn't in place and those people didn't make those decisions, women would either have not had the right, or like I said, they would have had those requirements. And I don't think that anybody, let alone women today, want to be required to be in the draft or required to have firefighting duty just to vote. Nowadays, I feel like a lot of people nowadays think that it's just anybody and everybody should have the right to vote, and there should be no requirements to do so. And so it would not have flown today. And then on the other side of things, you have stuff like civics on how laws work and how states' rights work and how the federal government works, and what constitutes a law and what doesn't, and what rights you do actually have, and when and if they're violated, when that occurs, and what you have the right to do in every certain scenario. A lot of people think that they have the right to do whatever they want whenever they want, and regardless of what is happening, specifically, if they, per se get pulled over by the police, they feel like they have the right to do whatever they want and try to, just make everybody's day more difficult. And that's just not the case. I mean, it's never been the case that you can just, defy the justice system. You can't do that. You have a lot of people, I've seen a lot of videos where people get themselves into a lot more trouble because they just don't want to give their identification, or they don't want to do what an offer is asking them to do. And, specifically on the identity part, I mean, if you're trying to conceal your identity from the government, I got bad news for you. They already know who you are, especially if you're an American citizen. Your Social Security number's on the books. They know who you are. If you refuse to identify yourself, they're gonna find out who you are. They'll draw your blood, or they have ways of finding out who you are. And so trying to conceal your identity just for some power trip that you feel like you have is very, very counterproductive. If you're doing something wrong, or even if you're not doing something wrong, your best option is to just comply to their orders. And I've seen it plenty of times where if you just comply on a traffic stop and give an officer everything they ask for, they may or may not write you a citation for your infraction, and they'll send you on your way. A lot of the time that's the case, that they're not going to look further into things. If you're not acting suspicious, they have no reason to look further into things. And one way to make them suspicious is non-compliance. Like, I know it's shitty to give up your personal information to someone, just on a whim from them asking, but at the end of the day, you're gonna make more problems for yourself than if you do give them it. Most likely that, if you are hiding something, or if you are doing something you're not supposed to do, they won't find out about it. I mean, I can't personally, I don't know anybody who's a criminal like that would try to be getting away with something at a traffic stop. But I'm sure it's a good percentage of the case where people get away with something on a traffic stop, because that's not what the officer is investigating. That's not what the officer is looking to do, And then, I think that a lot of people just need more education. And, I've told a lot of my friends and people that I work with and stuff that I think that in high school, they require math classes and they require English classes, but they don't require, a civics class to learn laws, to learn your what rights you actually have, and how you need to go about dealing with certain situations, and what federal laws and what state laws apply to you specifically. Because that's another thing that I've seen, is a lot of people take a general kind of feeling on what the laws are generally in the country, and they apply that in every situation. And it's just not the case in a lot of states. Each state has their own different laws, and a lot of them are wildly different than some other laws. For example, most of the states have a one-party consent law in place, where as long as you're in a public place, or a place that privacy is not a reasonable expectation of privacy is not warranted, anybody and everybody can film or audio record anything or anyone they want. And a lot of people think that though that law, doesn't apply in certain situations, and it does. And then in places like California, where they do have a two-party consent law, but that's only in certain circumstances. Out in public, where you don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy, the same rules apply, that people can film and people can audio record and stuff like that. And even there, people still don't understand that that's the case, and people get irate about it. I've seen some YouTube videos where people go out and they travel and they film and they show off certain cities, and people just get irate about it and call the cops, and the cops, they tell them like, hey, they can film, blah, 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 and people just still don't understand. So I think if we had these classes in school, so that people would at least get a basic understanding of what they need to do, and what applies to them and what doesn't, and give them those building blocks to find out what what they can and cannot do, and what their rights are and stuff like that. I feel like it would go a long way to improving a lot of interactions with not only law enforcement but everyday person to person interactions, and just generally stuff like that. But that's all I got to say for today, guys. Thank you. Bye.